I'm going to just do a quick roll call, and if I'm missing anybody, like Figdor.
Here.
Councilor Dion. Okay, we see you. Councilor Ray.
Here.
Hi, Belinda.
Hi.
Matthew Winch.
Here.
Aura Russell Better.
Here.
Jay Norris. Paul Stevens. Abigail Fuller. Okay. And from our team, we have the superintendent, Javier Botana, and
Hello,
our
everyone.
operations director, Steve Stilfen, as well as, is it Aggie?
Aga?
Aggie, thank you. God.
No problem.
You have a beautiful first name, though. Welcome from Drummond and Woodsum. And
Pleasure to be here.
thank you very much for joining us. And we have from our Harriman Architects team, we have Lisa Sawin and Emily Wah and Mark Lee. And I think we're gonna, okay. So today is Thursday, December 17th. We're doing business via Zoom. This is the District Advisory Building Committee. We've just taken attendance, and I'd like to welcome, first and foremost, we have two new members. One is my co-chair, Councilor Dion. He's here with us this evening.
Thank you.
And we have a new school board member, Aura Russell Better. She took Mark Belfonce's place. Welcome, Aura.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. And welcome, Mr. Brad Post. I think we're good to go. So I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent to kick us off.
Great. So today, and let me also extend a warm welcome to now Councilor Dion and co-chair of the committee. Thank you for joining us. I know that you've been a longtime supporter of the Portland Public Schools in general and the Buildings for Our Future effort as well. So it's great to have you on the council, and it's great to have you here with us now as co-chair of the District Advisory Building Committee. I also want to extend a warm welcome to Ms. Russell Better, now a board member, but very familiar with the work of the DABC and all of the BFOF efforts as someone who has been involved from the very beginning. We have a substantive agenda that primarily has two items on it that we really need some guidance from the, well, actually one of them we need guidance from the DABC, and the other one is primarily an update. We want to update you on the applicability of the Green New Deal referendum passage on the Buildings for Our Future projects. I think at this point this is not news because I know that you've all been receiving information as we did the work with the school board, but we thought it would be worth our while to spend some time today. And I'm very grateful to Aga Dixon from Drummond Woodsum for joining us here. Aga, as you know, has been the person who has helped us to sort of analyze from a legal perspective what the implications of the referendum were, and so she's drafted the memo that is that you've seen on this issue, and so Aga is here to help us explain it to you. And then the item that we really are looking for feedback from the DABC is on the notion of staggering our bids for the three projects. You'll recall that we introduced that concept in October. I think it was October, maybe it was September. Time flies. It was this fall, and it was somewhat abrupt. And we recognized afterwards, talking to some of you, talking to the co-chairs, that we need to have more process around that. We put it on hold because of the whole Green New Deal thing. We didn't know if we were going to actually be able to move forward with the projects as they had been conceived at this point. But now that we are in the process of moving forward with those, the school board had a first reading on the proposal to move forward with bids at the last school board meeting on December 7th, and will actually be asked to vote on that on December 22nd, so next Tuesday. And we committed to the board that we would come back with with guidance, advice from the district advisory building committee. So that's the big agenda items. I know that we have other things on there as well, but those are the two that we absolutely need to get to today. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Mark to, do I need to give you ability to?
Yes, please.
So Mark Lee from Harriman to share his screen with the PowerPoint, and then at the appropriate time, we will transition over to
Absolutely. Great.
Mark, before you begin, I wanted to say one thing quickly too. For those of you that are joining us newly this evening, as with the other Zooms, we have the raise your hand function. So I'll monitor that, as well as Lisa and Emily, I'm sure, from Harriman. But if you have a question or a comment, please just use the raise your hand function. Sorry about that, Mark. Go ahead.
No, very good. Thank you. And I'm trying to organize the video panel so that I can see all of you, but people have disappeared. So I will rely on others as well to interrupt. But as Superintendent Batana discussed, the two primary items that we're dealing with are just the update on the Green New Deal, and indeed Ms. Dixon from Drummond Whitsom can guide us through that, the finer points of that. And then we'll get into a conversation regarding, now that we understand the impact or implication of the Green New Deal, or lack thereof, then we'll look at our next steps with getting the projects ready to bid, and what that might look like with a staggered bid if we go in that direction. So, so with that, I'm going to just sort of open the screen up to all these words, but Aga is going to kind of give us the overview of what the findings ultimately were with the Green New Deal.
Thanks, Mark, and pleasure to be here with everyone today. For the benefit of the new committee members, I thought I would give everybody just a quick refresher on where we were the last time I participated in this committee meeting, and what we've learned since then. So the last time we met, we did not know whether question C had passed yet, and Superintendent Botana had asked me as the election was nearing to dig into whether the question C, which is the Green New Deal, of course, would have any consequences to the 3 elementary school renovation projects. We looked into that at some length, and I prepared a legal opinion that left some uncertainty about whether or not the projects would be affected by the Green New Deal. And we had a very robust discussion with this board, and a number of your committee members were actually very helpful in identifying a couple of issues that we had not dug into as deeply as we should have. So we went back and looked into those couple of issues, and that's what I will summarize for you today, the results of that additional inquiry, which is summarized also in my November 23rd opinion. It bears mention that we did not dig into the applicability of the fair wage provisions that are included in the Green New Deal. And that is because, as you know, this committee and the school board had already decided to incorporate those provisions, essentially incorporate the same provisions into these projects, even prior to the Green New Deal being a question on the referendum. So we felt, after looking quickly at those provisions, that it would not substantially affect the projects in terms of cost and time frame. What we focused in on instead was the portion of the Green New Deal that dealt with amending the Portland's Green Building Code, and that the Green Building Code was amended by Question C in essentially three fundamental ways. There's a new standard called the Better Roof Standard that requires projects to reserve a solar zone, basically an allocation of space on the roof to install solar panels at a future date. The Green New Deal also requires that projects be certified to the most recently published LEED Silver standard. Prior to Question C, the standard was the 2009 LEED Silver standard. And finally, Question C requires that projects comply with the most recently published ASHRAE Energy Improvement Standard. So there's also a provision in the code that that required projects to comply with what is known as the MUBEC Appendix. That's the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code. And on discussion with the State Fire Marshal's Office, it turns out that this appendix doesn't yet exist. So that resolved the issue for our projects, at least. So we don't have to worry about that any further. So on a second review of these standards, and especially the applicability provisions in the Green Building Code, we concluded that there is an applicability section 302 in the existing code that was not affected or amended at all by the Green New Deal. And this is essentially what is known as the grandfathering rule. When I looked at that more carefully and reviewed it against case law on grandfathering, I reached the conclusion that so long as site plan applications were submitted for the three projects prior to the effective date of the Green New Deal, then we would be grandfathered under the old version of the code. By city code and under the city's charter, the effective date of the Green New Deal was December 6th. And after discussing this matter with Mark and the Harriman team, we made sure that not only all three applications were submitted for site plan review before that time, but that they were deemed complete for review by the city planning department. So my legal memo goes into all of the gory details as to how we arrived at that conclusion. But the bottom line is, for that reason alone, we think that we believe that all three projects will be exempt from those Green New Deal energy efficiency standards. We also reached out at your committee's suggestion. We reached out to the city tax assessor and found out that the assessed value of the properties that are affected by these projects is significantly below the market value. That gave us an additional consideration, at least for the Reiki project. As you may recall, these new standards and the Green Building Code only applies to new construction and renovation projects that are owned or occupied by the city. The definition for renovation is very esoteric, and what it basically requires for our purposes is that at the time of the application, the total construction cost must be greater than or equal to the market value of the property as determined by the city's tax assessor. So we had been using the assessed value as a step-in determination by the city's tax assessor of the market value. But after reaching out to him and having a back and forth discussion on what is the actual property value of these projects, it turned out that for the Reiki Elementary School project, the property value is greater than the total estimated construction cost, as is shown on that chart at the bottom of the screen. So because that's the case, then we believe that in addition to the applicability provision, Reiki School is also exempt from these new requirements for the separate reason that it's not defined as a renovation project under the code. The other two projects probably are, but Reiki clearly is not. So based on that analysis and the additional digging in and learning about these projects, we've concluded that it's very likely that all three projects are going to be exempt from these three additional energy efficiency requirements.
Very good. Thank you, Aga, very much. And we'll pause here, see if there's any questions on this. Matt, I think, has Sarah.
Any questions, anyone?
Matthew's hand is up.
I don't see that, sorry.
I'll help you.
Okay, thank you. Now I see it. Matthew, go ahead. Sorry.
I guess the question I have is just concerning the opinion on site plan review being the trigger for project being applied for. My experience, and I don't know, Mark, if yours is any different, but I've not seen code offices, code officials acknowledge a project start date any earlier than the date it was submitted for a building permit, not for site plan review. So I'm curious, Aga, if you were able to get an opinion from code enforcement and plans review in the city of Portland on how they are treating project submissions that were in planning prior to December 3rd or 4th, whenever the month was.
Yeah, I reached out to the city solicitor to get her feedback on this as well, but I will, and she doesn't disagree with me on this analysis, but one thing that I wanted to point out to you is the section of the section of the applicability section in the Green Building Code makes reference to two triggers for grandfathering: projects that for which site plan applications or building permit applications that are not associated with an approved site plan are submitted. So when I look at that, in order to give that any meaning, you have to kind of understand the context by which projects go through planning review with the city. And there are basically two tracks. You're either on the site plan track, in which case, as you just noted, you need to go through site plan review as well as get a building permit or go through building permit review. But if you don't, if you're not on that track, then you just get your building permit application. And so when I read that applicability provision, it basically indicates that depending on which track you are, either site plan submission or building permit submission, but not both, are required to become grandfathered. And in our case, all three of our projects require site plan approval. And so the date of the site plan application submission would be the grandfathering date. And so long as that falls before the effective date of the amendments, which would be December 6th, then we would be grandfathered under the old rules.
And we did submit, ahead of that scheduled time and got, verification that those were, complete and in the process.
But you are absolutely right that this is not the default rule. So if we didn't have this applicability provision, the analysis would be much more akin to what you pointed out, which is site plan application review probably would not be enough. You'd have to go through that and also start have a substantial start on your building permit application review before becoming grandfathered. But this applicability provision in the code changes that analysis significantly.
You all set, Matthew?
Yeah, I am. I wasn't aware of the applicability provision. It hadn't come up in our past meeting, and I wasn't about to read that document since it's out of my wheelhouse. But thank you, Aga, for that additional insight.
Sure.
Thank you. Councillor Ray?
Yeah, I would just double down on what Aga said, that it is called out specifically that it is the application for either site plan review or building permit. And I did have a conversation as well with the city's corporation council, and Aga's very conservative in saying she doesn't disagree. And I'll go even further and say she absolutely agrees that this is okay, that this is going to be unaffected by the new ordinance.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions at this time? Okay. Mark, you want to continue?
Very good. So what it does mean, though, is that we're still moving forward on a couple of fronts with respect to the Green Building Code on the projects as it relates primarily to Longfellow and Presumpscot. But we're also moving forward with, or still tracking our progress on lead for Reiki as well. And so the two things that we are continuing with would be the lead certification, or design and certification, and the fair wage, independent of the Green Building Code. But as was noted earlier, just like Lyseth, there was a commitment to go forward with fair wage contracting and tracking that through the project. So those pieces are still retained as part of the project. So what it means is we're kind of back to where we were. We took this time and we paused to figure out what the implication of all this is. Now that we know that there really wasn't an implication by the Green New Deal, the vote in November, our scope is as it was, and we're now moving forward. But we have lost some time in the schedule as we've sorted all this out. And just a refresher on the fair wage contracting, and this is something where, again, we had some assistance from Drummond Woodsum on the Lyseth project. But what we look to do is ensure that there's a level of wages and benefits that are customary for trades in a particular geographic area. So the State Department of Labor publishes wage standards that we use as the baseline for fair wage determination in the for these construction projects, and they break out the specific trades, their hourly rates, and their benefits. And those are sort of the minimum that are paid to those trades, and we require certified payroll from the contractor at the time that they submit for payment, and that's our mechanism to enforce that they are paying these wages. And so that's built into the contract documents that we put out, and we again review those as contractors submit for payment. So that's what that published listing looks like. I don't expect anyone to be able to look at this, but for instance, a painter makes a minimum wage of at the time this was published, and this was for Lyseth, was $16 as the minimum, so that's again one example. So that's the first topic. I'll again wait to see if there's any additional questions on that before we move into the second point of our conversation this evening.
I think you're all clear.
Okay, great.
And Mark, sorry to interrupt, but before you continue, I just want to see if Javier, you'd like me to stay on or?
No, I think you can go, Aga. Thank you so much for
Okay.
being here.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
So the next area that we want to address is the idea of how our strategy to bid the 3 schools. And we've had a lot of conversation about what the right strategy is. We've sort of looked at it from a lot of perspectives. Spent a fair amount of time in last year really looking at this. But as we got closer and closer to putting the project out to bid, we started to get inquiries from contractors. We started evaluating what the bid market was, and also looked at our time frame now to move these things forward. And we're coming forward tonight with a proposal to look at staggering the 3 different schools approximately a month apart, and I'll sort of go through the logic of the timing of the scheduling here, and we can have some further discussion on it. But the first school we're suggesting would be Longfellow, and that has to do with the first 2 are going to be Reiki and Longfellow, and that's because they have the longest construction schedule and the most, and that's really kind of governed by the amount of interior renovation and amount of swing space that we have available for us. And Presumpscot doesn't have the same constraints, and so it has a shorter construction period, so it would be less impacted by going later. So that's why Presumpscot is shown to go later. The first one that we're showing is Longfellow, and it shows a bid making the documents available for contractors to bid on them on February 25th. And the reason February 25th is, again, we've lost some time due to the pause in understanding the implications of question C in the Green New Deal. But the other part of it is that we're looking at the pre-qualification of contractors, which has a period of accepting applications from interested contractors, vetting their qualifications, allowing an appeal period of time, and then once that period of appeal expires, then we can then move forward with the actual bidding of it. And so right now we're in the process of completing the pre-qualification steps and getting that advertisement out. The pre-qualifications will be due on January 14th, which, as I said, starts a series of steps if there is a disqualification and an appeal from a contractor. The reason we have chosen to pre-qualify the contractors is because we want to ensure that we have a pool of contractors that is qualified to do work that's similar to this type of work, which is in a phased construction in an occupied school building, and we want to evaluate their qualifications, their capacity to do the work, their experience in doing school construction as well. So so that part of the pre-qualification, again, is what's dictating the schedule. But so what will happen is with the staggered schedule, the first project will bid on the 25th of February. We'll open the bids on the 25th, so that's a 4-week bid period for the project. And then what we'll do is wait to bid the second project until we have a bid opening, and that allows a contractor, if a contractor was not the most qualified bid or responsive bidder, it gives them an opportunity to bid the successive projects. And so if they're interested in getting a project and they didn't get the first one, they still have a chance to get the second or third one. Ultimately, the contractor who got the first one, if they have capacity and interest in getting more than one project, they can also bid the second project as well. So there's a flexibility in staggering this way that gives contractors a choice of getting one of the projects or pursuing more than one project, and they can choose how many they feel they have the capacity to handle. So that's why there's a bid opening on March 25th, and then the next project bids on the 30th. At the opening of that 4 weeks later on April 27th, there's a few days before we begin the bidding process for the final school project, which would be Przemska. So that gives, again, some time to understand who the at least the apparent low bidder is on the previous project. And so that then opens on the 27th. And what we have shown here is a couple weeks to vet the qualifications or vet the bid, not necessarily the qualifications, we've already done that, but to vet the bid of the project to ensure that, and for the contractor to get their bonds and to execute the contract. So that if all goes well and the projects are on track and under budget, that will execute those contracts and get those projects underway. So I'll pause here for a second, again, for if there are any questions or thoughts.
Nothing, Marco. Oh, Emily, Ms. Figdor.
Thank you. I just have a question about the level of interest that we've gotten so far in these projects.
Yeah, Emily, we've been hearing from several contractors. I'd say there's approximately 2 to 3 that regularly kind of check in with us and track where we are with them. In fact, I think as soon as they read, I think the posted information on the school website about the impact of the Green New Deal, they've been tracking that whole process and reached out to us right after that. So we don't know yet the full interest of contractors. We will gauge that on January 14th because we'll have a list of all those who have submitted to pursue the projects as part of the pre-qualification process. Part of the pre-qualification process too will be to solicit interest prior to us getting to the point of bidding. So that may help us too a bit as we move through what now is kind of the construction period of contractors starting to look for work for next year. Okay.
Good question. Thank you, Emily. Any
So
other questions right now? Okay, go ahead, Mark. Thank you.
great. So the why, again, the strategy behind why we're doing this, one is to create as large of a contractor pool of as we can, and the reason we want more contractors is because the more qualified contractors we get, the likely that we'll have better value because you'll have more competition. So, and there's a lot more contractors that can bid on the smaller price tag of one school that then can bid on all 3 schools. And so, so that's a part of the strategy to create a larger bid pool. The second is that we know that on the large pool, large contractor pool size, there's some projects out there that are competing against this that are larger and potentially more attractive to the contractors. The 3 schools, well, they're very important and transformative. They may be seen as almost messy projects because there's a lot of interior renovation. They're phased over a period of time. And so that's something where if I'm a large contractor, I'm looking at a new build from ground up, that I might pass on the Portland projects and pursue those other 2 projects. And so that's a potential competition that we would avoid by splitting them up to smaller projects. And we have demonstrated that this worked successfully recently in fall of 2019, so about a little more than a year ago, where we did a similar phasing of 4 schools but 3 projects in Yarmouth. And so where the first one was a $5 million construction project, and that came in just under the budget. And then we had 5 bidders on that. On the second bid, we had actually 7 bidders, and that one as well came in under budget. The largest of them was the last one, and that was $28.3 million, and we only ended up with 3 bids on that, and that was actually over budget at that time. And so we were able to value engineer and bring the project in and execute the contract on that ultimately. But the aspect of this is that we actually had the staggering worked. The first two projects we had significant interest in the projects, and all those were drawn from our list of pre-qualified pool of contractors, and we had 7. Any questions on the strategy? Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mark, just a couple of things that I just want to make sure are clear to everyone. I think, one of the concerns that we've heard in the BLAC meetings and so on is, that by staggering projects, that, the last project would potentially have the least, it could potentially, if all the other projects come in above, above what's budgeted, that could affect the last one. So what's the answer to that question?
Yeah, and the sort of the first step, I think that we've thought that would be the course of action is that we're adhering to our appropriated budgets that we've established back when we looked at the scope of this, back when this group started looking at the classroom option, and we developed the scopes and we developed these budgets for each project, and those were aligned with the amount of work and construction work that was going to be there. And so we have adhered to that for the most part. The one exception to that is at Longfellow, where we've expanded beyond that because we saw some savings in the interior renovations. They weren't as expensive as projected. But that being said, we've structured the bid in such a way that the intent is to keep each project within the budget amounts that we've outlined at the beginning of this. It, of course, can be, there can be a transfer of money because it's all one BFOF funds, but it'll be up to this group to determine if there's interest in moving out away from that strategy of saying, no, we're on the first one, we're going to value engineer to our budget. On the second one, we're going to value engineer to our budget. And on the third one, we're going to value engineer to our budget to make sure that we stay within the appropriated budget amounts for each school.
I see Aura's hand is up, Sarah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Aura.
Oh, thanks. Mark, this might come up later, but when you had the dates up between, I think it was putting the bid out. I think it was, yeah, thank you. So the bid opening and the bid awarded, like for me to wrap my head around that when you were just, excuse me, when you were explaining that, the decisions about each, what we're going to accept or not, and maybe just the process about making those decisions. Would there be, are there plans for DABC to meet in between those? Like, is that part of the process? Is like between those opening and awarded times are going to be like specific meetings to discuss those?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Or I think we'll want to make sure that we have communication, particularly if everything either way, if the bids come in below what the budget is and we move forward executing the contract, great. We'll meet and update everyone, and we can sort of understand where we are on each school project. If it isn't, and we have to enter into value engineering, then obviously we'll have more conversations regarding what scope of works we're going to value engineer on each of the projects. And so absolutely we'll have scheduled meeting times with all of you during that process.
Okay. And then one other thought was just, I don't know if you're going to speak more to it, but I know you had shared, I think in the building level committees, I remember you sharing this too, about the concern about maybe the competition of those other projects and just how many contractors are really available. I mean, is that just, I know you said you've heard from a couple of contractors that reached out, but is it really waiting until this time till we're really going to know, like, are there many contractors showing interest, or is there kind of a process before that that's more informal? Just because I don't know that process and how that works.
Yeah, and again, others that are familiar enough with the bid market. We've got a few other architects on the meeting here, but there's on a public bid project. By going through the pre-qualification advertising, we'll start to see. And very, very shortly here, we're going to start to see people. The advertisement goes out next week. We'll start to see who's really interested in this, because they're going to ask for information to be given to them. So we'll start to get that. And like I said, the first time we'll really know that will be on January 14th. On the Lyseth project, we didn't go through the pre-qualification process. The first time we were able to kind of gauge the interest of contractors was we have a walkthrough with the contractors prior to the bid, and we actually ended up with a large number of contractors that showed up for the walkthrough at Lyseth, but we only ended up with 2 bids, as we all recall, and so we're hoping to avoid that scenario this time by going through the pre-qualification process as well. What we think happens oftentimes is there are certain contractors that if they know that there's projects that have interest by contractors with low overhead that come in that are known to come in at a low price, they won't even bother going through the effort of putting all the information together to price the project. So by doing a pool of pre-qualified contractors, it sort of creates a little bit more level playing field for the interested contractor. So we should really understand the interest by contractors in early January, which is not a bad time in the bid market to know that.
Thank you. So helpful.
And then my other question, Mark, was on the Presumpscot project. I think one of the things that is, really exciting about this is that is a shorter project, and so, if we stick to this schedule, we'll break ground next summer, and we'll still be, virtually ready to start school for the beginning of the 22-23 school year, with the project substantively done.
Yeah, that's what most of these projects are, the schedules are predicated on, is the idea that we would have both summers, the summer of 2021, the summer of 2022 for Presumpscot, and an additional summer for 2023 for Reiki and Longfellow. But the idea is that the intense amount of work that can happen when buildings are not occupied, we have the summers available to do that. That limits us to about 8 weeks in the summers to get that work done. So according to our schedule right now for Presumpscot, we would have the interior work that can get done both the summer of 2021, 2022, and then the construction for the additions is about a year-long projects. And so we should have enough time in order to get those done if we start the summer, that they finish up in the summer of 2022. So because, again, the majority of the work at Presumpscot is the additions, which can go unfettered because there's not a lot of entanglement with the existing building. The biggest addition at Presumpscot sort of occurs on the back of the building, and it's a sort of a very clear separation. That construction goes on during the school year, unabated by activity inside the school building. So yes, the idea right now is that that's a shortened construction cycle for Presumpscot, and we would open for the fall of 2022. Of course, things don't always go according to plan, but that's the plan right now.
Aura's hand is up again.
Sorry, I just have to ask this, Mark, which is sad. Javier, I don't know if you weigh in this, but so say next, okay, so starting summer, I'm just wondering, say in the fall, and there's work being done, and say we still are dealing with COVID, and students trying to be outside. Like, I'm just trying to picture like what's been happening in our space now, right? Like during COVID with using outdoor space, and then thinking about that construction, like, can you picture like how that might be affected if the space is being used as it has been this past strange year? Like, is that anything that's been considered?
Yeah, and we had, I think, or you probably remember our, we had sort of those site logistic plans that showed, and Presumpscott's a tough one because there's a fair amount of space that we need to build the addition and support the contractor's laydown area for that. We did try to maintain a lot of space on where the current playground area is in the back of the building as sort of that recreation zone that's free and clear of the construction zone. But I don't think we haven't sort of looked if how many of the outdoor spaces that are currently being used during this COVID time are used or would be impacted by those laydown areas. So that's something we probably need to do a little further review of.
Yeah, I think it just would be helpful at some point, when we're there, to be able to picture, because I do remember now talking about the playground. That seemed like that entrance, and I think you did lay that out when I was trying to picture that. That seemed like that could be protected to be used, but I guess I am trying to picture like the whole soccer field area and the other spaces that I know have been used for outdoor learning. So maybe just a flagged question down the road. So thank you.
Yeah.
I will say that we were pretty careful to protect the soccer field. So the portables are hugging as close to that hardscape play area so that we could keep as much of the soccer field open for the students and faculty to use.
And I don't know, for some reason, guys, and I apologize for the delay. So thank you, Javier, for helping me out because I can't seem to see hands on this end for some reason, but thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
So again, we talked a little bit about the staggering of which project would go, and really we kind of worked backwards. We said, okay, which is the one that has the most flexibility, and that was Presumpscott. And so then we looked at Reiki and Longfellow, and Reiki is almost all interior renovation, and it's a larger project too, but again, because it's all interior, the thinking was that Longfellow with a more substantial addition on it would benefit from going first, to have a longer period of time to get the contractor able to get ahead of it, get site work organized and break ground with the addition at Longfellow. So that's why that one moved ahead of Reiki. But both of them are 30-month right now, predicted 30-month, which is the same duration as the Lyseth project, and they would have a similar. So both of them would start around the same time in June and complete in August of 2023. So that's the conversation on the staggered bid, and we've kind of actually already outlined the next steps through the bidding cycle. We're right now completing the construction documents to those dates that we've shared to bid them, and from there we'll be again meeting regularly with you through that process to update you on it. The next, yep.
Can I interrupt you for a second? At some point, I think it would be helpful to have a motion from the DABC that is then voted on by the committee to approve the moving forward with this proposed schedule. I want to remind the DABC that it's an advisory committee, so the board could go in a completely different direction. But I think that we wanted to actually spend some substantive time on this and explain the rationale, so that you, as the group that advises the board, has an opportunity to understand that fully and sort of endorse it or not endorse it. So I would appreciate that before we move off of this topic. And I see the Councilor Ray's hand is up.
Yes, I'd be happy to make that motion that we approve this, and our advice to the school board is that we move forward with the staggered bid schedule for the building of the next 3 schools.
Thank you, Councilor. Do we have a second? Mr. Winch? Are there any questions from anybody further on that? Ms. Figdor?
I have a question. Thank you. Mark, I know you just said this, but can you, it didn't sink in completely for me. So would you mind restating the thinking behind having Longfellow? I realize the difference between the schedules is short, right? About a month, but the thinking behind having Longfellow be the first of these 3 schools that we bid. I understand the Presumpscot issue, so I'm just thinking about Reiki versus Longfellow.
Yeah, and it has, thanks, Emily. It has to do with, again, that the addition at Longfellow is larger than it's a very, very small addition at Reiki. So it's just that entrance area that we're adding the conference room and a small area for the admin. And so because Longfellow has a more complex site development, if we bid it first, it gives it a little more time to get the site work going, which takes more effort to get the site work underway and the additions going than it does for the interior renovations. The interior renovations are more easily to start under construction without as much complication or effort because of site work. So that's why the larger site work at Longfellow is why we pushed that one forward a month.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we don't have any public, so all those in favor of the motion, and Councilor Ray, could you please repeat the motion?
Oh, whoops. Oh, I never muted myself. I'm always pleased when I don't mutter when I'm not muted. Yes, the motion is to advise the school board to move ahead with the staggered bid schedule as proposed by Harriman tonight.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, just show of hands. Anyone opposed? Okay. Passes unanimous with all those present.
I'll lower my hand.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay, great. Moving forward, Mark Lee.
Very good. So as I said, this was our updated schedule here. We have a pre-qualification process through February, and then our first bid, second bid, and third school bids successfully in those timeframes, and then the start of construction in the spring, summer of 2021, which is effectively at the end of May when school, whatever it looks like at that point, is done for the year. And that's slightly different from our original, where we were originally intending to bid during November through January. And again, we had the pause because of the Green New Deal, but we were still looking at a spring 2021 construction. So that really hasn't changed too much, but things have again pushed, and the staggering will help us a little bit with that. So, and with this next item, what we again thought we would do is bring everyone up to speed on the assistance that provides the owner another tool for management of the projects. And Mr. Stilfen can give us an update on the interviews for the owner's rep, clerk of the works.
Good evening, everybody. Today we completed the fourth of 4 interviews for owner reps with 4 different firms. WSP Colliers, CHA, and F. David Lewis, who is our current clerk / owner's rep on the Lyseth project. Very encouraging interviews, really well qualified and well diversified, and the interviews revealed quite a revealing depth of the interest that these firms have taken in our projects, from watching our Zoom meetings to scouring the documents on the web page. A lot of excitement, a lot of talent, and a lot of ability to bring the management forces that we need to have in place to run not just these three. We'll still be wrapping up Lyseth. So after our scoring rubrics, we'll make a recommendation to the superintendent to bring forward on the hiring. Next step in the process after the interview is to make that selection, work a fee schedule and a clear line of responsibility designation to projects, scheduling, phasing where they work into in hours for particular durations of new construction to renovation construction, so we get a complete picture as in conjunction with Mark, Lisa, and Harriman and Emily, we'll have our owner's rep in a position to assist us as facilities, the superintendent, and the school board in review and understanding construction change orders, budgets, quality, safety, all of the aspects that are boots on the ground management of these projects as they are coming to fruition here.
Very good. Thank you, Steve.
Good.
I mentioned prior to the pre-qualification process, and this list here is simply the dates that led to that the first bid date of the 25th. And so the process is, again, that we're going to submit the draft of the pre-qualification packet. That has happened, and it was submitted to the city as well. And then, as I said, we'll be advertising for that next week. The qualifications are due on the 14th of January, and we'll review those at that time and notify the applicants approximately a month from now. And then there's an appeal period that starts on the February, or as soon as they are notified. But the end of the first appeal period is February 19th, and then we would begin to advertise for the documents on the 25th. Well, we advertise them prior to making them available, but the advertisement occurs right around the 25th. On that, in terms of the process.
Mark, Dion, I don't think you're muted. There you go. Thank you.
In terms of the process after we receive the bids, we would review them with this committee, and then we will make a recommendation to the board for ratification of the contract, and then award the contract. So that's it will happen for all three contracts. There'll be three separate contracts for the three different schools. Lisa, am I forgetting anything on that process?
Nope, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So our next immediate steps are next week on Tuesday evening. We'll meet with the board on the to have the vote on the action to go to bid, and our next scheduled DABC meeting will be on the 21st, and at that time we'll have a list of interested contractors, and so we'll know those who have submitted qualification packages. And then on the 4th, Thursday of January, we'll have the BLAC meeting as well. Somewhere in all that, we've been talking about trying to get an update on the Lyseth project, and it never quite seems like the right time to be there on site to conduct it. So we'll see again if there's an opportunity to do something more than just some images, but it's really exciting the way it's taking shape in some of the spaces that are finished now. The most recent one was the gymnasium is now been turned over, and shortly the kindergarten wing. And so we're going to go down and take a look at the contractor's work next week on the kindergarten wing, and so that's pretty exciting as well.
And they start moving in on Monday.
Yes.
Wow.
And the project update is included in the agenda for both the Lyseth project as well as the 3 school projects. So if you go on the agenda and board docs down to the updates, those are attached there. And then we also did not approve the minutes. So
I was going to backtrack on that. Thank you. I turned it over so quickly to Mark Lee that.
Very good. Well, we thank you again for the opportunity to bring everyone up to speed, and appreciate the input and effort from everyone here.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly go to the approval of the meeting minutes. The snow is doing us all in, I guess. So the last meeting we had was on Thursday, November 12th. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of November 12th?
So moved.
Seconded by Ms. Ray. Are there any questions on the meeting minutes? Any errors or omissions? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes for November 12th, please indicate. Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimous with all those present. And opening it up to you all for any questions from this evening's meeting that hasn't been covered yet that you'd like to ask.
I just want to say I love Stephen Stilfin's wall color. Beautiful. It is beautiful.
I had nothing to do with it. It was all my wife. I was out to sea when this house was built. So she chose all the colors, and I just live here. Thank you.
It's like plum color, huh?
It's beautiful.
I want to apologize for my debate about the dog and snow and what I got to do when I'm done this meeting.
No worries, counselor. I'm sure there's been worse.
Oh, God, I didn't realize I was not on.
That's all right. We're all learning still. Okay. Well, thank you all.
I'm sorry. Who
Yes,
made the motion? Really? I didn't hear who made the motion.
So the motion for the meeting minutes was Ms. Figdor, seconded by Ms. Ray, and it was unanimous with all those present.
I just want to express gratitude to the Harriman team for getting us so close. It's really exciting to be at this phase. So thank you so much for all of your work. It's been challenging over the last few months as we've tried to figure out the potential implication of the Green New Deal, and we're there. We're on the other side. So thank you so much. And again, a real warm welcome to Councillor Dion and to School Board Member Russell Better for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Figdor. All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, motion for adjournment. Ms. Figdor, seconded by Ms. Ray. All those in favor? Okay, you're adjourned at 7:10.